Thank you for being here. What can we expect? What's happening? I want to pack in as much as we possibly can, and I want to be able to answer the questions that you specifically have. So I want this to be as valuable as possible, and we're going to do that together. So what can you expect today? Some of the techniques I want to share with you is kind of my patent pending umbrella technique. So here is me self-filming a video where I've strapped an umbrella to my actual tripod. So we're going to do two things here. I get really passionate about the headspace stuff, the philosophical approach. And I also get really passionate about the technical. So we're going to start with the philosophical. And then towards the end, we're going to really hammer into some of the technical stuff. And so if you're the kind of person that maybe you're watching the replay of this, you're going, okay, well, this is a little too philosophical. Well, guess what? Technical's coming. And if you're feeling, hey, this is too philosophical, let's get practical. Well, guess what? We're going to do that as well. Who is this for? These lessons are based off the hundreds of mistakes that I've made as I've been getting into filmmaking. So regardless if you're a content creator, documentarian, want to get into self-filming in the woods, want to tell stories about other people, or maybe you want to start a YouTube channel based off your hobby of collecting rocks, this session is going to help you with that. Why is it so hard to start, and why is it even harder to finish? These are the kinds of things that keep me up at night. And some things that I've noticed is that one of the main reasons why it's really hard to start is that you're just not in the practice of doing the thing. There's hundreds of steps required to make a finished video. And if you aren't familiar with these steps, if you aren't intimate with the process, if you aren't practicing them, the friction to go from standstill, not making videos, to making videos is a gap that is massively far to cross. It is a huge gap to cross. You might assume that it should feel easier to make videos. You might accidentally choose a project where the scope is way too large. This is such a common thing that I see filmmakers do, where some of the first projects they want to do is just these massive documentaries where you're going to follow a subject matter for 6 months. And this is the first project that someone's taking on where they're going to do this massive documentary. And I'm going, you know what? I did that. I took on many projects that were too big. And you know what happened? I didn't finish them. Why is it so hard to start? We need to become really comfortable with the process of making a video. And that process is to shoot, to film the video, then to edit the video, and then we share the video, and then we repeat. This whole process is connected. If we assume at some point making videos is just the filming, we ignore that what we film has to be used in an edit. It's not just going out with your camera and filming a bunch of shots that you like. It's about filming shots that actually can be assembled into a finished thing. And if we spend all this time on our editing and we aren't actually thinking through, okay, how does this edit reach someone at home? We're going to spend all this time finessing over details that don't actually make an impact for how that story gets experienced by someone. So I'm a big advocate. If you're stuck, if you haven't been making things you like, it is so critical to hop into this cycle as soon as possible at whatever skill experience level you have, because it's through this cycle that you will improve. It is through the cycle of filming, editing, sharing, the lessons that you learn in that cycle and doing it again, where the process of making videos, especially if they're about yourself, especially if they're about subject matter you care about, becomes a whole lot less stressful because you're more comfortable in it. It's a pair of shoes that you've worn a lot. I see this happen all the time. People don't like talking on camera. I don't like talking on camera. I find it uncomfortable. I find it awkward. And in order to get better at talking on camera, you have to practice talking on camera. And I see this with slacklining all of the time. So I don't know how many of you have actually tried to stand on a slackline before. The first time you stand on a slackline ever, what's going to happen? Your leg is going to wobble like crazy. It's going to shake. No matter how gifted you are as an athlete, as an outdoors person, maybe you're just naturally talented at everything. The first time you stand on a slackline, your leg's going to shake and your body's not going to behave the way you want it to. And the only way to get past that is to put in the hours and to try again. That is the only way. So speaking on camera and being a creator and also knowing how to use your camera, knowing how to film other people, all of these layers of our skill set are not things that we should assume are natural. They're not things that we should assume we can just do easily. These are skills that take deliberate practice. And the way we practice that is by filming, editing, sharing. because we're not just making videos for ourselves, we're making them hopefully for a person to experience. So that share piece is a critical part of this whole cycle where we needed to interact with real people in real time. And what happens when we do this is that we experience a cycle of improvement. So you start to get a sense of what you like. I want you to hop on that cycle as fast as possible because learning, here's an idea that I have. Now I'm sharing it with the world and I want to see how it goes. That cycle is the most important. And this is why solo filmmaking is amazing because you have that whole process in your control. And if you refine the skills of telling a great story through video while you have control of everything, that means who you are now as a person and the voice that you're developing and your storytelling skill set and your ability to sense is this good or not can take to any project you work on. So any person that you collaborate with, any larger crude project, maybe down the road you have a bunch of funding for a documentary and you get to bring on your friends to help you make it. You're now ready for that stage because you're intimately familiar with what it takes to actually make a great video. I want to set one thing straight for the record. We are not trying to steal attention. The things I'm making to put out into the world, I'm not just trying to interrupt people and grasp onto and hold on to as much of them as I can. I'm not trying to take from people. I don't want stuff from them. That's what I think of like this trendy retention-based style editing that's super aggressive and uses all these tricks to try to hook someone in. What we actually are doing is we're here to add value. So this is my whole approach to storytelling, is that I'm trying to do projects that add value and don't take. And when you're approaching it from that lens, then it's no longer, hey, please let me steal some of your time for this thing I worked so hard on. It's, hey, here's this story that I really think could be helpful for the right person. Maybe, like me in the past, you felt like you weren't quite creating what you feel you're capable of. I want to see some hand raises because I can actually see there in Zoom. I want to see in Zoom, how many of you actually feel that you haven't been quite creating what you're capable of? Because I personally wanted to make videos that had more connection. Oh my goodness, 36, 37. Okay. So that's connecting, right? This feeling of you're not quite reaching what you know you have inside of you. So for me personally, that was, I wanted to make videos that have more connection. I didn't want to make just a slideshow, a montage to music. I wanted to make something that made people feel something. And I was tired of showing up with a camera in my hand and not knowing what do I actually film to tell a story, because this word story, we hear it all the time. And I know story is most important, but when I'm actually there with my camera, it's like, okay, story, right? What does that actually mean? So maybe when you show up, you just put your camera on a gimbal and start rolling on dozens of moving gimbal shots, but you know you're missing something. You know there's a lack of intentionality in what you're doing. And we know story is most important, but how do we actually do that? And there's actually a really beautiful, simple approach that has made a lot of difference to me. At different times, I've been all of those things, disappointed with my work, wanting to make better work, and I'm still in some of those places right now. And 8 years ago, I was actually going to quit filmmaking. I was trying to get better, but I was really struggling. I'd been working at learning the skill set of video for 5 years. I'd been researching hours and hours of camera gear. I'd attempted to take no less than 3 massive doc projects that were all like 6 months long, failed at all of them. I had the term storyteller and cinematographer in my bio on Instagram. Meanwhile, I had no idea what a cinematographer was. And at my part-time job, I was saving up for each new lens or tripod, and I had built no less than 4 different sliders. I was 5 years in, yet I hadn't made anything I was proud of. In fact, I couldn't even get my mom to finish some of the videos I had made. That's how bad they were. Yet I managed to turn that story around. Since then, I've made over 500 videos, and I've made some adventure films that I'm incredibly proud of, ones that I self-funded and finished. Certain projects where I was able to rope some of my friends into helping with different aspects, but just projects that no one else was going to give me permission to make, and I went and made myself, following my friend Mia around as she broke world record after world record. Just an incredible talent. What a gift to be able to follow her. I, through our YouTube channel, made a series of videos converting our production van into a home on wheels, and Janelle and I drove that all the way around North America, up to Alaska, across Canada. It was just an absolute joy. And some of the videos I've made have reached millions of people. So on the channel, we've reached over 30 million people, which is a number that's not really fathomable, but some of the videos have really connected. And through this process of making videos on the internet, I've actually gotten a chance to end up meeting my digital mentor of storytelling, Casey Neistat. and actually got to travel to New York City to make videos with him, which was just an absolute joy. And this is just a small little flex, but earlier this week, I got a text from Casey. That's kind of a fun little message to get from someone that you look up to. Apparently, the videos that I've been making lately, he says is great. So that's pretty rad. Reduce friction. So one of the ways that I do that is just make sure that my cameras are around and easy and ready to use. So I want to be very familiar with my tools. If I am planning to make a video this week and all of my gear is in different spots and the batteries aren't charged and the memory cards might have stuff on them and everything's kind of in different places, the friction to go make a video is increased. It's immeasurably harder for no reason. If I had just gone and put all my gear in a place where I could actually see it, where it's there, it's present in my life, where it's on the top of my mind. And as I'm going about my week, I can see all my stuff's actually right there. So all I have to do is pick it up and use it. You want to reduce friction as much as possible. What's getting in the way? What step of making a video am I stuck on? And find a way to reduce that friction. So I actually encourage every single one of you to, at some point, open up a Word document and type out exactly what's involved with every single one of your video stories. What does it take to make a video from beginning to end the way you make them? I think you'd be shocked at how many steps there are. There are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of steps, hundreds of steps in the process of making a video. So if you're in this place where you're stuck in your head and you're going, I'm not making things that I'm proud of yet. Well, there's a chance one of the big reasons why you're facing friction is because you haven't actually defined what the next steps are to take to actually get that done. And the beautiful part, one of the simplest things is just charge your batteries. That's one of the steps to making a video that you're proud of. So another reason, you're worried that if you actually make this project, the people that you look up to are going to be critical of it. You're worried what people are going to think. You're worried what the people in your family might think about you being the kind of person that's either taking video seriously. Maybe you're filming yourself, heaven forbid. Maybe you've actually started a channel and you're putting it out there. And so you're aware that other people might notice that this is happening. And ideally, that's the goal. If you're wanting to create internet videos, you want people to be aware, but you're thinking, okay, what's the family going to think? What's the internet people going to think? Well, let's start with the second one. So internet people, the people that you look up to. This was a big factor for me. I thought, if I start posting videos, they're going to notice that I'm inspired by the way that they make videos, and they're maybe going to realize that I don't make them as good as them. Let me just tell you something unequivocally. There's some mean people out there, but for the most part, the people who are actually in the arena telling good stories are not judgmental of you finishing something. Let me say that again. So when you finish a project and you put it out there into the world and someone you look up to sees it, I can guarantee you they're not seeing that and judging it. People who are actually showing up and doing the work aren't judging people for finishing things. So this idea that the people you look up to are going to see what you finished and go, this isn't good enough, they should be doing better. Well, of course, that's just a reality of making videos. Every storyteller is so fixated on the own layers that they want to improve at. But the fact that you've actually finished something is what's actually important. And then the people that in your life who are maybe judgmental of it, maybe it's family members, maybe it's other people. Because let me tell you, over Thanksgiving dinner, when you're telling people that you've started a YouTube channel and you're making videos about yourself, Aunt Susan is going to go, how many followers do you have? And so you're going to just have to get comfortable with this conversation that if you only have 50 followers, that's just reality. And you just have to decide that those short-term conversations that you're going to have that are going to be uncomfortable don't matter in the long run, because you're the only person that has to live 100% of your own life. So I encourage you, if this is something you want to take seriously, to really just acknowledge that people whose opinion you care about aren't thinking about you negatively in the way you might expect. And then the people who are just asking the questions are just asking the questions, and they're just fine. This is part of it. So when I was completely stuck and I wanted to make more internet videos, what I started doing as just my bare minimum, because the thought of I had at this point failed at 4 different documentaries, none of them got finished. Some of them I didn't even start filming. And I was just paralyzed. I'm like, I know I need to start creating. I'm working a full-time job. I feel like I don't have time, and I'm addicted to my phone. So what do I do here? Well, what I started doing was just doing daily time lapses with my phone. So this was something that I did in 2013. And for a month straight, I took my phone, set it down, and took a time lapse. And what happened when I started doing this is that it built momentum and just this energy of, hey, let's go find some cool shots. Let's go find some cool angles. I started to see and experience the world differently. It's so much easier to be in a headspace of making great stories when you're actually trying to live a great story, when you're actually looking for those shots in and around your life. And that momentum of actually starting with the phone built to, hey, now I'm going to make a commitment to try to make some videos that I talk in, but I'm going to share those privately. And so that's a little bit about my story that I'm going to share later. But the important part here for me is that constraints are your friend. Let me say that again. Constraints are your friend. You don't need a 6-month project. You need a 1-week project. You don't need a 1-week project. You need a project you can do in a single day. You need things you can actually see the finish line of and get done to build this momentum and this confidence in yourself that you can actually show up and get the project done. So this is specifically advice for people that feel stuck. If you're just like completely paralyzed, you need to pick a smaller goal. And coincidentally, these constraints end up being a superpower for storytelling. So now, whenever I'm doing a project, the thing I'm thinking about is what limitations can we put on this to make it more interesting? Oh, you're going to go up north in a fly fishing trip? Let's not bring food. That's a self-limited constraint that actually makes an interesting story. So constraints are your friends. Are your friend. You could have multiple constraints and multiple of them are your friends. Nobody wants to hear the change the scope thing, but it happens all the time where people come back from 8 months of traveling, 3 months of traveling, and they brought their camera along, recorded a ton of footage, and then they'll send me an email and say, hey, I just went on a trip and I recorded a bunch of footage and I have no idea where to start. And I'm bummed for them because the reality is what they're probably going to end up with is a glorified slideshow. And what they needed to do was get a sense of what ingredients are actually required to make a story before they left. They needed to get in the practice of seeing the world differently, which is assembling video captured shots into moments, which then create scenes, which then create videos. This is a skill set that you need to practice by filming, editing, and then sharing and seeing how that's interacting with the real world. Again, if you're stuck, limit scope, limit scope. And on the note of getting started, we can acknowledge that it seems to be a rite of passage for every single person that creates on the internet to completely overthink the process of coming up with a name. Oh my goodness. I don't know how to bypass this for you, but it seems like anybody who wants to start a YouTube channel, who wants to start creating something under a brand, under a thing, just obsesses over this layer. Building a brand is dumb. It's amazing how much we obsess over this as we start, but we think, oh, I've got to build my brand. I gotta do branding. I gotta pick a name. I gotta pick a logo. And as I was saying, this is a rite of passage that I think every person who creates on the internet has to go through. But the reality is, brand is not graphics. Brand is not the name. Brand is the trust you build with people as you show up and deliver on what you said you're going to do. So we can obsess over building a brand that people will feel is something, but what's way more important is to start. So if we're completely fixating on, oh, I've got to get all of this dialed in, I've got to get all the saved usernames, I got to get all this, sure, go for it, but do it quickly, please. And let me assure you that building the brand off your personal name is often a way better case because people like following people. So if we're going to embrace this pathway that I'm advocating for, which is solo filmmaking as a way to improve your skill set and also finish stories that you like, embracing your personal name is fantastic because it lets people know. And I learned this the hard way. I used to go to conferences and get to hear my friends introduce me. And when they would get to my channel name, they would forget it because I had a forgettable name. I had a fancy name that I thought I could hide behind and feel protected by, but that was just a cop-out. So sure, a specialized name could work, but it's a problem if people can't remember it, right? So cool. You might think, Levi, you're wrong. I'm going to come up with the most amazing name and it's going to get me a bunch of followers. We're going to do the Adventure Film School and it's going to be this huge success. Great. But what actually means something is if you show up. So this is just kind of my little rant on why building a brand in the sense of doing graphics is not ideal. That's not what you want to be doing. The meaning is created in the doing. So by over stressing about a name, you are doing a disservice because what you actually need to be stressing about is how to make a better video. That's what you should be spending your time on. You shouldn't be wasting it on stuff that feels productive. That's not. So this is just a massive lesson that I need to keep reminding myself of over and over and over. what we talked about earlier, making a video has a lot of steps. It takes a lot of work. And that effort does not deserve someone's attention. Effort does not equal attention. Just because you spent so much time on a video does not mean that someone is going to enjoy watching it. Nobody cares about the effort. And truth is, making videos is a lot of hard work. But just because you put the time in does not mean that someone should give their attention to it. So what actually makes a great video then? What should we be fixating on to incorporate into our video stories? What's the ground floor? What's the golden rule of storytelling? Is it interesting? It's that simple. Is it interesting? When's the last time you freely gave your attention to something on the internet for any amount of time that you didn't find interesting? This is the ground floor of everything. This is how I've approached my entire process of filmmaking. This is what I want you to take away from this session. This is the one thing, okay? If you develop a sense for trying to take what you find interesting and share that with people, that's a winning formula. Everything else doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have the top of the line editing software, the best cameras, even the good techniques. None of that matters if what you've made is interesting. So you need to ask yourself, this video that you spent all this time on from your 8-month trip around Europe, is what you're making actually interesting? Sure, it's a worthwhile thing to do for your own memories, but if you're hyping yourself up over sharing that on the internet, you need to ask yourself, why would someone else care? And we think that we need to ignore what people think, oh, don't worry, the internet's wrong. Well, why are we spending all this time making a video? Because we want it to connect with someone. So you get to decide who that someone is, who your ideal audience is. But at the end of the day, there's no world where I would spend months of my life editing a film if I didn't post it. I spend that much time on my work because I'm sharing it, because I want someone to see it. And it's a massive disservice to me and their time if the thing I'm spending my efforts on is just wasted effort because it's not interesting. So it doesn't matter that it took me 2 months if the thing itself is not good. So to flip that on its head, if you spend all your time worrying about the technicalities and the process and the tools and don't stop to ask this interesting question, you're in for a world of just disappointment. So once you're on the pathway of interesting, you can use your growing skill set of video technicality to further service that goal, but not the other way around. Because we as filmmakers love the gear, we assume that because we know how to use it or are experimenting with using it, that should earn people's attention. But in reality, they don't care. They don't care. If it's not interesting, they're not going to care. They don't care about the effort. They care about stuff that is interesting. So this can also be stressful because then you can think, well, what I'm making isn't actually that interesting. Are people going to care? Or you can take that as 2 thumbs up moment and go, sweet. What do I like? What do I find fascinating? When I have my camera in hand and I'm on location, what is it that is pulling my attention? How do I see the world? And what's drawing in my curiosity? That curiosity for me is like the bedrock philosophy of how I approach every single story that I tell. I cannot get my brain engaged in something if I don't care, if I'm not curious. So I take that curiosity with my camera in hand to how I film everything. Why am I filming this? Am I interested in it? Am I curious about it? Of course, we've got these systematized processes for getting shot lists and actually assembling the ingredients for making a good documentary and a good story, but I need to be interested in it. That's the point, right? I'm really hammering this home because as we smash through some of the technical stuff that's coming up, I don't want that to overwhelm you. I want to keep coming back to the interesting. So what do we find actually interesting? Turns out it's people. So this is one of the golden rules about storytelling. We're gonna speed run this stuff here. So this is the section that you're gonna want to go to the replay for. I made the mistake of thinking that it's detailed characters people find interesting, and we see this happen in documentaries and film festivals all the time, where we start this outdoor adventure film and all we're hearing is all these quotes from people that hypothetically know this person talking about why they're so cool. And we just hear all this detail and detail and detail. And meanwhile, I can't actually place any of those quotes to the person, and they essentially mean nothing. So the filmmaker is intentionally trying to be like, get to know this person through these facts. But what actually helps us get to know someone, what actually helps us get to know a character, is to put them on screen, to see them on video, and then watch them make a decision, to watch them do something challenging. We don't need detail about people. We need to see people do things. We don't need detailed people. We need doing people on screen. We don't need to hear about them. We need to show them doing. It's one thing to say, oh, this person is so generous. It's another thing to just show them being generous. And with video stories, showing is of critical importance. So if you're wondering, oh, I want to make these videos that connect with people, but they're not connecting, put people on screen. I can't tell you how many times I've watched these videos to help review with some of my students. And for the first 2 minutes, there's not a person's face. We're getting all this B-roll, we're getting all these drone shots, but we're not seeing a face. And what creates connection? We're humans. I hope you are. We empathize with people. It's like a shortcut to connection. So the individual I referenced at the start of this session who wants to start a YouTube channel about rocks, that's great. If you're into rocks, do that, please. But if you make only your videos about rocks, you're really limiting how that's going to emotionally connect with someone. So you can do that. We can use video as a toolkit for anything, for tutorials, for education, for explanation stuff. Not everything has to connect, but if your goal is to connect, you should ask yourself, why is the video I'm making right now not connecting? And if you watch back your film and you realize your video and you realize in the first 3 minutes, there's no people, that is a problem. So there's no like hard and fast rule here, but when I make my projects, I try to get the people's faces on screen as soon as possible and to simplify that experience for the viewer at home, because we can only take in so many new people in a story project. So if we have all these ones stacked up, it's just going to be completely overwhelming. So here's a picture of a van. It's a very nice van. I like this van. Hey, the van just got more interesting because there's a person in it. Which one has a higher likelihood of creating an emotional connection? Well, the shot with a person in it. That's just a fact. And so put people in your stories and you're going to be light years ahead. So, so much of what I do in my doc work is simply just recording people. I just stand next to them with a wide angle lens. I get the microphone nice and close and I just record them. It's not detailed characters. It's doing characters. What are they doing? So most of the documentary projects I work on are showing an interesting person doing something. So what are they doing? You need a mountain to climb. Your story needs an objective. If it's going to be a story, it needs to exist for a reason. What are people doing? So we're using the simplest form possible here to make it explicitly clear. You need a mountain to go up. That is your plot diagram. This is why we have it easy as adventure storytellers, because so many of the objectives naturally have this built in. So you don't need to plan it. It just happens. But in your project, you need to know what your video is about. If you don't know what the project is that you're working on, what it's about, there's no chance the viewer's going to know. So it's of critical importance to choose a physical journey to then put your character into. That is vital. And this goes across all mediums of storytelling in the adventure format, from short to long. This is of critical importance. What am I watching take place? And you do not want this physical journey to be vague. You want it to be clear. Your viewer should know what they're watching. What you want to be vague is how the person's going to change as they go about this experience, right? You want it to be vague. Is it going to be successful or not? And this is a good question mark for yourself before you even start your story, your project, your video project. Is the story I'm about to tell have a chance of failure? If the story you're about to tell doesn't have a chance of failure, then there's chances that it might not actually have the ingredients of a good story. So maybe it should be a different kind of video. Maybe it should just be an explainer video, an educational video. But if you're trying to tell stories, you want to incorporate some element that might fail. So what actually is a story? I said before, what is interesting is the golden most important question. But let's just quickly boil this down to the fundamentals. And we could spend a lot of time trying to decide this is a story, this is not a story. A roller coaster architect is a storyteller. Your barista who made your cortado is a storyteller. So everyone's a storyteller, right? That's the world we live in. Everyone knows stories important. Everyone wants to tell stories. So instead of trying to say this isn't a story, let's just get super clear in the adventure context about what is a story. So what is a story in an adventure context is a narrative told for a reason. So a series of events shared for a reason. So it's the retelling of something, but there's a reason those events are being retold. If I simply just told you the facts, a computer froze and stopped streaming. That's a narrative. When we flip that over into a story, it's, hey, friend, I was doing a webinar last night that I prepped 2 months for. And while I was 30 minutes into it, the computer froze on me and everything went black. And I had no idea if I was actually going to be able to finish the webinar. Right. So now we just took a narrative and we turned it into a story because it's being told for a reason. There's layers added to it. It's not just facts, it's facts with a purpose. There's people, places attached to it. So let's just like big picture. This is the formula that I attach to every single thing that I do. And once you think about this, you'll notice it everywhere. But it's incredibly helpful for me to just break this down to its simplest of ingredients. And story is a subject that experiences change. And then we see life after the change. So these three ingredients are what the 3-act structure is. This is stuff that Plato talked about forever ago. And it's these layers that on a macro level on your big project need to be present, but also on a scene by scene, shot by shot basis. If you find yourself just constantly creating these B-roll montages, you want to think about this sequence of subject, experiences, change, life after the change. So when I have my camera in hand, it's almost always because I want to film a subject. I want to film a person doing something. I need to film something happening. I need to film myself doing something. And what I want to do is show that subject doing some kind of change. Something is happening. We need stuff to happen in our stories. We can have moments of pause, but stories need to be going somewhere. Your audience needs to be thinking, what's going to happen next? And if they can figure it out, that's a problem, but you want them to be invested in it, right? So on a shot by shot basis, in just 2 frames of video, you can tell this narrative of a subject, life after the change. So if I showed you a shot of a fish bowl with a fish in it, and there's a cat beside it, and then the next frame I showed you was a cat in a fish bowl, but there was no fish in it. Like that is a narrative arc across 2 frames without even showing the change, right? So when we jump from the subject and then life after, we know something happened in between. Like it's clear that things happened. And so at its most basic level, you can just take 2 frames, put them together, and that tells a visual story. And you want this visual storytelling skill set to be why you're holding your camera and recording the shots you are. That's how you end up getting purpose into your B-roll. Oftentimes when I'm on location, I'm looking and I'm just following my curiosity. When I see something cool that's happening, it's usually something that's what in this formula would be change. Someone's putting gear in a bag. So if that's happening and I think that's visually interesting with my subject matter, I'll then reverse engineer and go, okay, here's the interesting moment happening. How do I take a step back from that and establish this? So the climbing harness is going in the backpack. Well, let me show the parking lot where this is happening and use that as my cut-in shot. And then what's life after that moment? Well, now we're hiking up a hill. So these little pieces of building blocks become what a story actually is. And you do that from shot to shot. You do that from moment to moment, scene to scene, and then across the whole arc of your story. It needs to have these ingredients in order for it to be a good story. One of the reasons why I'm so passionate about this session and what I was saying with why it makes such a difference and why I wish I could go back and tell my younger self this is what I want to tell you about is an opportunity to really focus and accelerate your filmmaking for 8 weeks. And the 8 weeks number is important to me because 8 years ago, I talked about how I was going to quit filmmaking. It's tough for me because I had invested so much of myself into the craft of making videos. And yet after 5 years, I still hadn't made something that I was proud of. And that was, I could get unreasonably emotional about it right now. But that was a really challenging time for me because I was frustrated, I was stuck, and I felt just utterly alone in this process of how do I actually finish things. This summer, if I don't make a film I like, I'm going to quit. And by making that decision with myself and that deal with myself, I put a string of things in motion in my life where I actually had to start doing instead of thinking and talking about doing. And so now I wasn't just doing time lapses with my phone every day of the month. What I had to do is now we have to figure out, well, when I finish this film, I want there to be people to watch it. So my hand was kind of forced. I wanted to finish a film that I liked, but I also wanted people to see it. And so all the while knowing that my storytelling skills weren't quite good enough. So I had like three massive problems. Hadn't finished something I like, had no audience, and really knew that I needed to get better at storytelling. And so in this 8 week commitment, what I decided to do is I needed to start making videos more often. And this was right at the time that Casey, he had started doing daily vlogging in March of 2015. And a friend sent me Casey's videos and said, Casey's videos are so fantastic. His storytelling is incredible, but the filmmaking is a little scrappy. And I remember seeing that and thinking, you know what? That's the exact opposite of what I feel my problem is. I've been learning how to do these fancy 8K time lapses, slider motion, bokeh, all this stuff, but I can't tell story worth shit. Like I can't make videos that are interesting. And so I started watching Casey's videos and I was just mesmerized by in a single day, he could tell an arc that was interesting. And I knew I could not do that. I knew undeniably. And I figured the only way to maybe get better at that is to try. And I had a hunch that if I got better at telling stories in my own life like that, that skill set would transfer over into the documentaries that I actually care about. Because I don't actually, this is a bit of a confession. I don't actually want to be a YouTuber. I don't want to have to make videos about me. I do this because I want to make videos about things I'm interested in. And so what I stumbled into that summer is as I started to make these vlogs is I realized if I have to make it in a whole week, that's actually super overwhelming. It's better if I make it in one day. And then week over week, I started getting better at the skill set of trying to communicate a thought inside of a single piece. And I started to practice this and I started to get more comfortable being on camera. One of my tips for being comfortable on camera is to pretend that you're on a FaceTime call. That's actually one of like my best tips. If you're struggling talking to your camera, just pretend that you're talking to your friend on FaceTime. That actually helps things massively. And through that process of 8 weeks, I ended up finishing a ton of videos. And I had finished filming my first documentary. And then I needed to edit it. And so I kept doing these videos. And by the time we got to December, I had a theater filled with people and I was sharing them with them, a film that I made. And that was still to this day one of the moments that I'm most proud of in my filmmaking career is actually finishing something that I was proud of. And the way that I did it is instead of overthinking every single step of making an adventure video is getting way more comfortable with the process, getting way more comfortable with making videos just being a thing that I'm doing. And that made a massive difference for me. That summer is also the summer that I ended up buying my Sprinter van and moving into it. And that was a deliberate decision, a decision to try to make my life more flexible so I could go make videos from where I wanted to. And something that happened after I finished this first film in 2015 is I started to get these questions from people asking, how did you tell such a good story? And this is just hilarious for me because just 3 months prior, I was sitting in a coffee shop going, I don't know how to tell a story. Like, oh my goodness. And then now I had finished one and people were asking me how I did it. And at first I thought, okay, I need to find out how to tell a story. So I started reading all these books and reading all these formulas. And I just started to I tried to regurgitate some of this advice. And I realized this is so overcomplicated. How do I reverse engineer what worked for me and then share that with people? And that's when I started Adventure Film Academy. So I started inviting people to come on sailing trips with me and I'd share the entire way that I make a video across a 5-day sailing trip. And what immediately started happening was one, the people who would attend these workshops were of incredible quality. And so it's pretty cool how by putting videos out there on the internet, I managed to get people around me that were actually amazing people already. But then these people would leave the trip and actually feel motivated. When they would see me make a video, they would go, hey, this was actually more straightforward than I thought. I like to poke fun at myself because there's really nothing fancy that I'm doing. I'm just actually finishing it. And so one of our alumni, Hubert, he went on to work for Sailing GP Canada and has made this beautiful documentary about Sailing GP Canada. And some of our other alumni, Danny's a massively talented filmmaker in Vancouver, and their commercial work is just stunning. We got Inesh, who runs an adventure sailing channel. We've got Scott Bell, who's gone on to make some incredible biking films and also runs an awesome YouTube channel. Um, and a resounding response ended up coming from some of these in-person workshops where people were saying, how can we take part in this if we aren't going to travel to you and going on a sailing trip with you? There's only 5 spots available per year for these trips. And I felt bad. I wanted more people to be able to experience this. And so 6 years ago, we started the process of condensing what we taught in the in-person experiences and making it into a format that we could teach over 8 weeks for people remotely. And that ended up becoming what we're sharing today. Registration just opened, and that is the Solo Filmmaking Masterclass. So this is just a moment where like I'm just thrilled through the roof to actually be doing this, because I've been caring so deeply about this for the last 6 years, and to be at a stage where I feel ready to make this opportunity open for people is actually a really big step for me, because I want to be fully invested into it. I don't want to just make courses and sell them and have people take them. I want to be alongside people in the trenches, actually figuring out how can we finish work that we like. So this is what I wanted to tell you about. We're going to get right back into some technical stuff, but bear with me as I share some of the details about it. What we're going to do is do 8 weeks of sessions every single Monday. A session like this is just another Monday in the Adventure Film Academy. And each session I'm going to bring to you with a concrete idea to actually put in practice immediately. So I'm going to give you exercises to do that aren't just homework, but things to actually make progress in your personal stories. So by the end of the 8 weeks, you'll have a skill set and a frame of mind, and also a community of people that are supporting you in getting stuff done. We're going to go through my story structure, how I do visual sequences. I've been going so fast in this session, but each one of these things we can explain and make way more practical through examples. How to be more natural on camera, how to self-film, my secrets for self-filming stuff. Some of them I'm going to share with you right now, but we're going to unpack them in more detail. Gear fundamentals, from solo filmmaking to how I level this up for documentary work, cinematic filming techniques for on location, how to accelerate your skills by growing an audience, building your own YouTube channel sandbox, and the art of editing, as far as how do we assemble a story together for people. And the best part about it is there's a community. So this is my favorite part. I felt incredibly isolated through these years of making internet videos where there's not people that I can connect with on a day-to-day basis. And when I log into social media, I just feel like there's so many things on there that are just screaming for my attention, that are just trying to take from me. And I wanted to build a place where when you logged into, you felt supported, where you felt, you know what, other people are doing the work. I would like to go do the work. And that's actually one of the most meaningful things I've found about community, is being able to feel supported by other people and to actually feel accountable to showing up in my own life. So that's what we're doing. It's going to be 8 weeks. I'm packing everything into it. And because we're bringing it to this scale for the first time in this way, I wanted to make sure the offer was just so good that it would be very hard to say no to. Because I'm confident that what we're packing in here, if you put any one of these lessons into practice, even from this free session into your own filmmaking, it's going to change your storytelling. So let's talk about it. The Solo Film Masterclass, 8 weeks. I'd love to have you join me. So it's going to be 8 weeks of live teaching with sessions, and then we're going to do weekly Q&A calls where I actually see your face and we talk, not this webinar stuff where I can't see you or talk to you. And I want to help you actually apply this stuff. Then after those 8 weeks, it's ideal if you can be there for the sessions live, but there'll be replays. The main thing is that you're actually doing stuff, because how many of us have taken courses, purchased courses, and never finished them? I've done that multiple times. I think there's about 5 I've purchased that I've never finished. I don't want you to just take another course and not finish it. So I want the stuff to actually be helpful, which is why we're doing weekly sessions that are practical, applicable, that you can do immediately. And then after our 8 weeks kind of accelerator time, the main core curriculum, we're going to have some of these bonus sessions. So I'm going to take you out in the field with me, show you actually how I select my shot angles, any technical layer that you want. Because this is our first time doing it at this scale, like anything that you want to know about this process, I will share. So I'm fully committed to walking alongside you in this experience. And that's where the 497 price tag. I will never sell it at this price again. Like I'm investing everything of myself into this because I want it to be ridiculously valuable and I want people to take it and have it change them and have it change their storytelling. So that's the Solo Filmmaking Masterclass 497. I'd love to have you join us. A part of the masterclass curriculum you'll have for lifetime. And then you get 6 months access into the community space on top of that. So the curriculum you'll have forever. And then you get 6 months in the space with us, active, live, vibrant. It's going to be great. Over here, we have all access. It's everything included in the Solo Filmmaking Masterclass, but we're also including our Business of Freelancing course. So this is a workshop we did on how to do video work for business, the fundamentals of it. And this is a workshop that is available right now. So if you purchase, all the course curriculum is right there. Also, you get the Art of Editing course that we're releasing in 2025, a very exciting course where I'm going to, in detail, step by step, show how I do story in the editing process. You get 12 months of Adventure Film Academy community access built into that. And then this is the ridiculous one. You get 50% off all of our future cohorts. So one of the ones that we're doing next year is one dedicated on documentary mastery, how to take the skill set of self-filming and then apply that to high-level documentary making. When you are great at filming videos on your own, you can take that skill set and do amazing things with other people. Thank you for letting me share about this. Our doors are now open. Enrollment is at adventurefilmacademy.com. I'd love to have you join me. This is a unique opportunity, and it's going to be 8 weeks that I think are going to be really impactful for me and also for, I'm hoping, everyone else that takes the invitation to join in on this journey. We're going to get into some tips. We're going to get practical here. When we talk about the ingredients of story, let's play this again. The ingredients of story. So we've got subject, we've got change, we've got life after the change. So we like to watch videos where things are happening. We like to watch stories where things are happening. So it's of critical importance in the things that you're assembling together that things are happening. That is so important. This section, there's going to be some concepts here that might be at varying levels of skill. So if there's things that you want me to elaborate on, you can add them into the Q&A tab. I'm not going to be able to explain everything in detail. So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about here real quick. So hopefully it's helpful. Let's just get straight into it. So the most important thing that I think you should invest your money into when you're buying your gear is audio equipment first. So once you have a camera, a phone, a camera, a lens, a camera you can borrow, you absolutely need good audio equipment. And that audio equipment needs to have the ability to still work in windy environments. This is so important for adventure filmmaking. So this microphone here on the top of my camera is one of the first investments I made to a really good quality shotgun mic, and it has paid itself forward like immensely. So this is a different microphone here, but this foundation right here is all you need to get started in the sense of a camera with a microphone on top, and you need the furry windscreen. None of that black foam stuff, because when you take that outside, it's going to just fall apart. And the audio soundscape in your films is so critical for making it feel real. When you just have a series of shots and it's just music and all the sound is pulled out, you'll find this happens, especially with drone sequences. There's just a layer to it that feels removed. We need good sound. So this is a shotgun mic, directional, great for talking, great for hearing. But something that I don't see enough people talk about is actually taking advantage of the stereo microphones that are built into every camera. So what I want you to do is purchase some of these fuzzy, let's change camera here. So this is a fuzzy piece of foam. It's so hard to show on camera. So can you see that? That's a piece of foam. These pieces of foam, these ones specifically are from Insta360. I really like that they're Velcro and sticky back. Put those directly onto the stereo mics of your camera on both sides. This is important if you film anywhere that's not inside. Put these on your camera, and that stereo sound is going to blow people's minds. So when you're in an environment that there's like noise and water and creaks, you need to record stereo sound on every one of your projects, because then that sound is so helpful when you go to do the edit. So you really want quality stereo sound, and you can do that with just the built-in microphones. Just make sure, the reason why most people don't use that audio is because it's always got wind noise on it. But if you put the fuzzies on, it sounds way better, and then you can actually use that sound in your edits. I've got a really fancy microphone that I invested in. It looks like this. It's like this is like a level up. So if you want to take your sound more seriously, I take this on every documentary that I work on. Not always the ones that we backpack in, but this gets ridiculously good stereo sound. And so if you're one of the people, the hundreds of people over the years that have said, whoa, how do you get such good sound in your projects? That's the start of it. But another piece is just like how you use it. So you really want, if you're recording dialogue with these microphones, is you want the mic close to your subject matter. It's so important for it to be close. So get that shotgun mic within arm's distance. It's why when I record interviews with subject matter, I'm almost always with a wide angle, because I want that distance to be nice and close. And then you'll get good full sound. On the note of this, you really don't want your audio to clip. So we're going to talk about that in a sec. But there's no excuse in your edits to have your music too loud. There's no reason. And this, I see beginners make this mistake all the time. They just plop music into their timeline and it's way too loud. So my starting point when I bring an audio track into my editor is I start by bringing the overall gain down minus 11 dB. That's kind of my start point, and I go from there. And then I try to bring my dialogue. I want the top clip, the top peaks to be hitting about -2, -3 at the top. And then that way you can actually hear the stuff that's happening, because people will not tolerate bad sound in adventure videos. They might tolerate it for a little bit, but if they can't actually hear what's going on, it's going to be a massive disappointment and you're going to be getting in your own way. So then the other thing that I do, and this is my secret weapon, so I'm just completely giving this away. Make sure that all the dialogue in your edits is tagged accordingly so you can export just the dialogue. And then I process all my dialogue through a service called Ophonic. So I buy credits. So, I bought 100 credits like a year and a half ago, and I'm down to 44 credits left. They have free credits per month. I think it's about 2 free credits per month. But this right here is the best dialogue leveler and denoiser I have ever found. So a lot of people like the Adobe Podcast Enhanced tool that can absolutely save you by reconstructing voices. But this tool is incredible at making the voices sound natural and just full. Good EQ. You can go in and you can tweak the settings. There's a lot to dive into here. There's a reason why there's full sessions dedicated to audio in the cohort. But this tool, if you export your audio, your dialogue from every single project, run it through this tool and put it back in, and then mute the original and just play this, it's going to immediately elevate your productions. So ideally, you could pay for a sound mixer to do this manually, keyframe by keyframe. But if you're producing as many pieces of content and you're self-funding them, you need to be able to move quickly. And this tool is incredible. So I don't really talk about this tool very much. The way that I use it is I have a watch folder set up on my desktop. So I just can, with a shortcut, export something into that folder and it processes automatically in the background. And then it comes back to my editor. It's brilliant. And I do this all the time. So there's a couple other secrets to make this workflow easier, but I can't stress enough how important this is. Audio. In adventure filmmaking, that's what we're talking about here. Wireless audio is not your friend. The reason for that is the distances of transmitters will have issues in an adventure filming environment, and also batteries. So transmitters will die. Batteries will die, and you only have so much gear that you can stay on top of when you're filming. So starting back with my original documentary Untethered, use pocket recorders. Specifically right now, the one that's been completely changing my life is the Track E recorder. It changes my life for 2 reasons. One, it has time code built in, so it will behave like wireless audio. 2, it's 32-bit float. What does that mean? What the heck is 32-bit float? The simplified version is that 32-bit float is kind of like raw audio. It's recording multiple gains at the same time, so that way you never have to set your levels and it never clips. So this is what one of the recorders looks like. And this is the microphone that I use. So you clip a microphone into it, and you'll notice on this microphone, I've got a fuzzy puffy because I do not tolerate wind noise. And the benefit of the fuzzy puffy is that when you put it on your jackets and your clothing, the larger puffy helps prevent that rustling fabric noise. So I've long since stopped caring about having mics shown. If I'm working on a documentary crew for a Netflix project, sure, we will hide the lavs. We'll have hide the lavs mic. If I'm filming just me or a two-person team, lavs are going to be seen. Because if I can't see the lav and see that it's not scratching, then I don't know that it's actually getting good sound. And with these recorders, you don't have to set the audio level. That means I could be whispering right here, and then a helicopter could land, and all of that audio would be usable. This is incredible. And the best thing is with these little recorders is that they record just all day, and the battery will last all day. So what I do when I go out and film is I use these, start them up, hit record all day. And then no matter what tool I use, if I'm using my iPhone to film a section, if I'm using my main camera to use a section, I know with certainty that I've got a lav mic clipped to my shirt that is going to capture incredible sound. And then you can use these little things. These are called, what are these actually called? These are called the Sync E, the Track E, and the Sync E. And these little homies plug into the microphone port of your camera and they embed time code. So it's like wireless audio, except they don't need to be connected. This is always recording, and the files will pair together in your editor and behave as if they were recorded onto the video file. I spent so much time on this because this audio workflow has kind of changed my life. When I made my film Untethered and Spencer did all this free soloing, we had drone footage of it, and all of the audio from all of our cameras was just screaming with all this drone noise. And that was awful. So what I did is I took one of these recorders and I clipped it to Spencer's harness and put the mic on him and had him go out on multiple different highline walks afterwards. And all of those sounds are what ended up being able to be used to build out the sound during his world record walk, which ended up becoming people's favorite scene in the film, not just purely from a wow perspective, but the visceral sense when you pull back the music and all you hear is the sound was an absolute home run. So these audio tools have changed things for me. Let's talk about camera stuff. When you're self-filming, you don't have the mental resources to, well, you can do it in two ways. So I embrace filming in automatic modes when I self-film, but it's really important to know how and why those automatic modes are working. So to me, I'm responsible for my camera. So when I look at the back screen of my camera, this is my old GH5 right here. Anytime I look at this camera, I'm taking in the information around the circumference. So I'm always trying to have a good pulse of how much battery do I have left? How much recording time do I have left? What's my white balance? And what modes am I recording in? Every single time I pick up my camera, I scan the screen and look over those things. And the reason why I do that every single time is because I've made mistakes where I didn't, and I filmed entire scenes in the wrong mode. And you do that enough times, it starts to become pretty painful. And then you decide, you know what? I think we're going to start taking this more seriously. So I advocate for taking your settings seriously. And what I mean by that is be a professional, just like be aware of what you're doing. If you're going to spend all this time out there climbing up a mountain, filming this documentary, the least you could do is just take in what's on the back of your screen. So on the back of the screen, if you're filming in an auto mode, something that you really need to know how to use is exposure compensation. Exposure compensation. So that's that little graph at the bottom of your screen, the 0 minus graph there. So you need to be able to know how to, so if you go through your ISO values and you go to auto ISO, you can change your exposure compensation to tell it, the computer of your camera, how bright or how dark to make the image. So this is really critical if you're using auto settings. And I often find that most cameras at 0 expose too brightly. So bring that value down in the exposure compensation and you're going to have a lot better time. And then any other settings you make will adjust to that depending on what your auto ISO is. So I'm using auto ISO all the time. We're gifted with these cameras now that can let you get away with that. But another big thing that lets you get away with that is by filming with consistent white balance. So consistent white balance in filming in a log picture profile is something that I highly recommend doing. And consistent white balance. So if you're going to do auto settings all the way, at least set your white balance. If you're filming outside, just set it to daylight and forget it. You're fine. What you don't want is your tint, the green shift and the purple shift changing from shot to shot. If you're going to go and edit this yourself and color grade it yourself, you do not have the time to shot match shot by shot by shot, and you probably don't have the skill set to do it. I certainly don't. So what I do is I film my whole scenes, whole day's worth in the same white balance. And if I need to shift it slightly, I can apply it to that entire selection of clips and it will all match. I don't need to change from clip to clip. So I can't tell you enough how important it is to avoid auto white balance like the plague. It will rob your images of warmth and color. For some reason, none of the auto white balance systems inside of these cameras behave in a way that feels natural. So always set your white balance, leave it for your scene. The only exception to this is if I'm going inside and outside in the same shot. So if I'm walking with someone into a building, then I'll just go to auto white balance and bear with it. But filming in auto is fantastic. Use a dedicated white balance value. And then the tag onto that is that if you're filming in log, the cool part about that is you get so much flexibility now when um, you get so much flexibility with how much you can push the image afterwards. So if you need to make it brighter or darker, you get that flexibility if you're recording a properly exposed log image, which actually isn't that hard to do. So some people say, oh, it's so hard to film in log. I find it harder to not now. I used to drag absurd amounts of camera equipment up mountains for my documentaries. That was a mistake. The reason why that was a mistake is that because I made my interview setup so complex with sliders and lights, I recorded less of them. And what I needed to do was record more. I needed more talking time with my people. And because my setup was so complex, I was hurting myself from being able to do that. So now what I do is I take simple things. Let me show you something. So this is a cheap little light. It's called a bubble light. And it's just a piece of silicone with a bulb inside, and it was like 20 bucks. Not even that. It's USB-C rechargeable. This is the bubble light from, who makes this? Nightcore. So this light, what I did, took a piece of orange film and put it over the light so that way it's warm, like a warmer color. And these little practical lights make such a difference. So here I'm showing a little lantern that I had in my tent. And these little accent lights when you're in adventure environments make such a difference. And it's not, um, so my trick is to have these cheap ones, but also get cheap headlamps. So I always make sure when I'm out filming that I have these cheap, like $20 headlamps with the little incandescent bulbs, because those look amazing on camera, the warm light, and they're not too bright. Our cameras are so sensitive now for low light that if you had a full brightness headlamp on, it would completely overblow the image. So if you're wanting a headlamp in the shot for aesthetic purposes, you want a cheap headlamp that's not super bright. Yeah, if you dim down a professional headlamp, it will start to flicker on video. So you want the cheap headlamp to be able to be the on-camera one. That's kind of my other tip for that. Taking notebooks with you and writing down thoughts and ideas and things you need to remember and shots that you need to grab. That is super helpful for leveling up the way that you're structuring these pieces later. Because when your brain tells you, oh, that's a good thought, I'm going to remember that later. Nah, your brain's lying to you. You're totally going to forget that thought. So what you need to do is write that thought down. That's important. And I do that by writing it. So thank you for joining us. This has been a blast. I appreciate it. Head over to adventurefilmacademy.com and join the newsletter. If you're here, you're on the newsletter. Who are we kidding? But we're going to have more resources coming out throughout the coming months and years. That's been it for this one. Thanks for joining us. And remember, life's better when you make stuff. Peace.